As any good task-driven American, I wanted to check off all the errands on my to-do list, but they wanted me to sit down and drink tea. Up next on the Crossing Ideas podcast. Welcome to the Crossing Ideas podcast. I'm Mark Sasse, where I attempt to view the issues of today through the lens of a lifetime of international living. Episode 5, Lien, Tea, and Patience. Are you a task-oriented person or a people-oriented person? For me, you give me a list of things to get done and you can count on me to do them. Maybe just don't ask my wife about the honey-do list. We'll just keep that to the side for the moment, all right? But think about the errands that you might typically need to get done on any given day. The bank, store, post office. Wait a minute. This is 2023. We barely even do any of those tasks anymore. We've streamlined our errands so much that we focus on other tasks. What? Well, we won't define really. But think about this. Stores, we order online for next day or even same day delivery. Banks, we deposit checks instantly with bank apps. We use AutoPay, Venmo, PayPal, and the post office? When was the last time the post office was relevant in your life? So even the basic human interactions we used to have at the store or at the bank or at the post office have been all but eliminated if we choose to live our lives that way. And obviously, many of us in 2023 do that. But okay, we still have, we still have errands to run sometimes. Just this past Christmas, on one particular day, I had to repair a broken picture frame. I had to pick up a gallon of milk to get gas in the car. It was a very linear sequence. A, B, C, done. Then I went home. All errands complete. And that is my mindset, or at least it has always been that way, typically. Focus on the task, move on. But when I moved to Vietnam in 1994, I ran smack dab into a completely new way of seeing the world through the lens of elevating people over tasks. Relationships became more important than getting things done. And I also learned that sometimes you can only get things done in Vietnam if you have a solid relationship with the person who can help you. Interesting. In America, when I went to buy a gallon of milk, I don't need a relationship to fulfill the task. Nor did the clerk expect anything reciprocal from me except payment. But when I arrived in Vietnam, in Hai Phong, at the Maritime University in 1994, I met a man. His name was Mr. Zoom. And one of the things that he said often, and actually I'll call it his mantra, every time we would talk to him and ask him about something, his mantra was this: step by step. Whenever we needed something done, something fixed in the apartment, an issue that needed addressed, he would say, step by step, step by step. Now, what he meant, or at least how I interpreted that, was everything would move at a snail's pace and there's nothing you could do about it. Well, I was this American coming in and I have this American attitude and I was like, hey, we'll see about that. I'm like, can do, go, 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 get it done kind of thing. But I quickly learned that as an American, I would either have to slow down and adapt to the pace of life, or I might just go crazy. I would become intolerant and I would morph into one of those stereotypical ugly Americans. You know, well, it's very true that there were some Americans living in Vietnam who couldn't adapt and couldn't quite make the leap. When we moved to Thai Nguyen, which is 60 miles north of Hanoi, in 1999, we would lose electricity almost on a daily basis. It was just became part of life, and we learned to, roll with the punches. Every afternoon, or pretty much every afternoon, we could almost count on it like clockwork. Electricity would be gone. We had an American friend who just couldn't adapt to those type of surroundings. And one day, when the electricity went off, she announced in frustration, she said, quote, "I'm an American. I deserve it." As in, I deserve electricity. How could I be without electricity again? Now, let me clarify. If she had been living in California in 2023, for example, during a blackout, then I would agree with her 100% that the electricity should not go out in America due to a lack of power. California, get your act together. But she was in Vietnam in 1999, and she needed to get her act together, or she needed to leave. To survive in Vietnam, you needed to slow down your mindset, lower your productivity expectations, and just enjoy. But wait, what? What are we enjoying? Well, how about the people and the experiences? This is typically how things worked. I'd be on my motorbike and I'd pull into a small shop, maybe needing to buy something or other. Could be anything from a box of tissues to, you know, powdered milk. Who knows what I was looking for in any particular day? But I would pull in, and it wasn't going to be anything that should take very long. I was just going to get in and get out. But, that's the way I thought it would be. But no, that's not the way it worked. As soon as they learned that I spoke Vietnamese, wow, out comes the tea. Out comes the tiny plastic stools, and they would sit me down. It didn't matter if it was an old man or a middle-aged woman. They would sit me down. They would pour the hot tea, and they would say, "Let's talk. Let's drink tea." I couldn't buy anything from them until I was able to fulfill their tea requirement. That's just the way it worked. And I quickly learned that the Vietnam workday was, let's just say, flexible. Someone might show up at 8 o'clock to start work, but then, you need to make tea and you need to chat for a while. And so maybe by 8:30, the office might start moving around and some work might start getting done. But quickly, 11 o'clock would approach, and 11 o'clock, you're getting close to lunchtime and nap time, which might extend out till 1:30. Okay? So that takes a nice chunk of the day in the middle that you really can't get much done. And though the workday might technically extend till 4 o'clock, you can't forget about those 3:30-ish or 3 o'clock-ish badminton games, which might break out in the courtyard in front of your office. You needed to unwind after this rigorous day at the office. And so if I was trying to get something done, I really had to show up at the sweet spot during the day, the productivity sweet spot. And it was fairly narrow, I will admit. But and so I could easily go out trying to get a bunch of things done and come home with not much. Example, I could go out with four things on my mind, and 2 hours later I would be home and I would have accomplished one of them. But I probably had met and talked with a bunch of interesting people. So the question is, did I waste my time? Well, I need to reference this list of value orientations again. The West is very much time and task oriented, while the East has traditionally been very much event and people oriented. It's just a different way of functioning and looking at life and connecting with people and events. And they had this wonderful thing in Vietnam that they called Thời gian cao su, which is literally a literal translation is rubber time. Time is just flexible. It bounces. You can mold it just like you can rubber. And so I had to learn to kind of adapt in that type of environment if I wasn't, as I said, going to drive myself crazy. And many of the valuable lessons that I learned were through my interactions with Lien. She was the foreign affairs official at our school, and the American teachers would go to her for a myriad of tasks related to visas, official documents, school issues, etc. She was kind of our connecting point to all of those, and she really became friends with the American teachers there. And I would often go up to her office and I would go in and say, how are you? We would sit down. And first thing what would happen is she would bring out the teapot. And I mean, this was a ritual, really was a ritual. She would grab the loose leaf tea and she would put it in the pot. And then she would pour in this scalding hot water from these amazing big thermoses. And she would pour in the water and let it seep for a minute. And then you've got to rinse that off, and then you put in the water again. And then finally, you get to the sweet spot of that really bitter green tea in Thai Nguyen. And then as we're doing that and waiting for the tea and sipping the tea, we would talk. We'd say, "How's your family? Lien, how's your family? How's your kids? How are things going?" And oh yeah, the weather's been so hot lately. Oh my, and blah blah blah. And we would just chat about personal things. When the chit chat was over, and after we caught up on all of the personal stuff, I would finally get to this point. I would say, "Well, I have to get ready for class." I would stand up and I would prepare myself to leave. But before I would leave, I would turn around and I would finally ask the question or finally get to the reason why I actually came. I would say, for example, by the way, Lian, have you heard about our visa issue? Or have you heard about this school issue thing? And she would say, "Oh, let me give you an update." And whatever the situation was, she would give me an update. And I'd say, "Thank you very much." And I would be on my way as we would say goodbye. This was the way that things got done. I had one simple question. I needed one simple answer. But to do it right, it would take a good 20, 30 minutes because the relationship took precedent over the task. And once the relationship was built and established and respected, then the task was simple. It would just get done. A couple of years after arriving in Thai Nguyen and building a relationship with Jillian and appreciating everything that she had done for us, she got very sick. And she was gone from school for quite a long time, and we heard it was cancer. A few months later, she passed away. It was all really sudden and quite shocking to us all. And that made me kind of pause about everything. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what was more important? Getting a timely answer to my business question or connecting with the person in front of me and getting to know her better? Her passing was really sad for all of us. We missed her a lot after she was gone. When she got sick, she had moved out of her house in Thai Nguyen and she moved back into her house in Hanoi before her death to be closer with her husband who lived there and her teenage children. After she passed, we wanted to make sure to visit in Hanoi and pay our respects to her husband. Her husband and family, they were so appreciative that we came. And we sat across from them. We sat across from each other, a little bit awkward. We didn't know all the protocols of mourning and offering condolences, but I could just tell that our presence there was enough, that they were touched and happy to know how much we mourned her passing. And on this day, he didn't serve tea. He took out a bottle of Vietnamese alcohol and he poured us each a small glass and he asked us to toast. Now, at the time, we were with an organization which didn't actually allow us to drink alcohol. But that wasn't going to stop me, not at a moment like this. I wanted to be fully there. I wanted to be fully in this to let him know what we really felt in our hearts about what had transpired. I wanted him to really know the true sorrow we felt. And so I raised the glass and I sipped to remember Lien and all the lessons of patience that she taught me. You know, when I look back upon that episode, it's not the business interactions with Lien which are important. It were those moments of slowing down and being present, just being there. Have you ever met a person who was like that, who was just fully present in the moment all the time, not thinking about the next podcast that he's going to do, not thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, but just fully being present in the moment? I had a professor once who was like that, and I never quite met anyone like him before or even since. And he would just literally give his 100% undivided attention to whomever he was talking with. And he would just square up and be present. And that always struck me as something very impressive and something to strive towards, something that I struggle with in many ways. He was just so in tune to the here and the now. And you know, those moments that I had with Cheat Lien, just being friends, just talking about life, those were the important ones. And I never would have had that if I hadn't learned to slow down and drink the tea. I've been out of Vietnamese culture for a long time, and I've definitely shifted back a lot in my ways, and I'm not sure that it's for the good. And now, with the technology that we have, it's so tempting, especially for an introvert like myself, to just keep my interactions digital and impersonal. Our thoughts and our relationships have become more fragmented than ever. And in some ways, I lament to see what Hanoi has become. I remember it as a sleepy little town where you could wander down the avenue and sit and chat for hours with any number of people. How much of the rat race of modern Western life has crept in? It's this strange dynamic of wanting to keep up with everyone else while also wanting to slow down and hide away in a log cabin. I mean, I feel like I oscillate between the two, and I'm afraid I may be there, caught between these two ideas for the rest of my life. I often think about Cheat Lien. How much better would this world be if we were just able to slow down, sit down, get to know people, drink the tea with those around us? How much more understanding would we have? What kind of a better world might we be in if we could build the communal bonds a little closer than being driven apart by the technology and the rat race of getting things done because I have such a long list of things to do? But life isn't about doing. It's about experiencing. It's about loving the people around you and being there for your friends and sitting down and drinking tea with those around you. And maybe someday I'll get better at it. But have you ever had someone in your life who has taught you to sit down, drink tea, and develop patience? Well, if so, I'd love to hear about them. For me, it was Lien. I miss her, and I am thankful for the lessons that she taught me. Hopefully, I'll be a little better at taking them to heart. I'm Mark Sasse. Thanks for listening to the Crossing Ideas podcast. In the next episode, I'll be talking country borders as I recall an unforgettable trip to a waterfall at the Chinese-Vietnamese border. Until then, please like and subscribe, share with those around you who would enjoy what I have to say, and lastly, thanks for listening.